So thanks to everybody who's on the call. And thank you all for joining us today. Thank you to our panelists for being here. We have a pretty exciting lineup of panelists. And I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves in just a couple minutes. First, I just want to go over the agenda very quickly and talk to you about a few points that we're going to cover today. And then we'll get to the introductions. So today we're going to talk about the impact of the Russia-Ukraine crisis on the supply chain. We're also going to talk about mitigating the situation in Shenzhen with the lockdown and potentially other Chinese ports shutting down in the coming days. We're also going to talk about the opportunity that freight forwarders have, we believe, in adopting a consultative approach amongst this supply chain crisis. And also we're going to talk about, obviously there's the Windward ocean freight visibility platform, which uses Maritime AI. But aside from AI, there are some other innovative technologies that are also impacting the supply chain. So we're going to also discuss this a little bit. So kind of a packed agenda. I want to go through as much as we can in the next hour or so. But first, I'd love for our panelists to introduce themselves. Thank you, all three of you, for being with us today. We'll start with you, Lars. Lars Jensen, it's really a pleasure and an honor to have you with us. I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, I'm Lars Jensen. I run an independent consultancy and analytical firm, Vespucci Maritime. And I've basically been doing the same thing for 21 years now in various roles. And I merely try to figure out not just what is happening on the container markets. I look at why is it happening and then provide advice to all the different stakeholders in terms of what should they plan for coming down the line, both in the coming weeks, months, years, and also coming decades, depending on perspective.
Thank you so much, Lars. Really a pleasure to have you here. Next, we have Simon George from Metro Shipping. Hi, Simon. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Very well.
So, let you introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm Simon George. I'm the Technical Solutions Director here at Metro Shipping. 25 years in the industry, and I'm responsible for the IT strategy, aligning our business aims and objectives, and also responsible for our BPO locations in India and Malaysia. And thanks for having me today.
Thank you, Simon. Thanks very much. And last but not least, we have Mike Chapman, our very own Mike Chapman from Windward, who joined very recently. But it's really a pleasure to have you with us, Mike. I really want to hear your introduction to the audience too.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Chapman, Growth Director here for the Ocean Freight Visibility product. I recently just joined the company. My background been in logistics for over 12 years. Variety of different guises, shipper lines with the two biggest, Maersk and MSC, and also some global freight forwarders and also a digital freight forwarder. I'm really excited to be joining the webinar today.
Thanks very much, Mike. So let's get straight to it. Just kind of try to set the stage a little bit. There's been kind of an unbelievable and possibly unprecedented sequence of events disrupting the supply chain in general and ocean freight in particular. And Lars, in our preparation towards this webinar, you had some interesting insights, including how the influence of the Russian sanctions on the supply chain is proof of how just how destabilized the supply chain has been in the last couple of years. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we entered 2022 in a state where congestion in ports and terminals had never been as bad as in the beginning of 2022. This all got worse during Q4 last year. It clearly did not improve. On top of that, we also ended 22 from the perspective that almost 13% of all vessel capacity is rendered unavailable because the vessels were stuck in queues. So we had absolutely zero slack capacity in the system anywhere. Then comes the Russia-Ukraine war. If this was a normal market, which clearly it isn't, from a pure container shipping perspective, this would be close to a non-event. Because if we are brutally honest, the sheer volume of cargo in containers to and from Ukraine and Russia is relatively small compared to the global volume. Furthermore, from an operational perspective, both Russia and Ukraine are at the very ends of the liner shipping schedules. They don't have any transshipment hubs. So in a normal world, this would only be a Ukrainian and Russian problem. It would not hit anywhere else. But with the congestion, it's a different story. Once Russia and Ukraine was shut down for traffic, that means all the cargo, and you got more than a month's worth of cargo on the ships, could no longer be discharged into Russia and Ukraine. It is now being discharged in the Eastern Mediterranean, in Black Sea ports in Romania and Bulgaria, and in North European ports. That adds more containers that cannot be moved into ports and terminals that are already chock-a-block full, worsening the situation. As I was about to say, adding insult to injury, that might be the wrong phrasing, but if you look at some of the North European ports, port workers have decided they don't want to handle Russian cargo. So on the bright side, you could say that means the Russian cargo is not going to clog up some of these North European terminals, but here's the practical issue. Russian containers might be on the top of the deck when the vessel comes in. So you still need to spend time getting the Russian cargo off the ship, only to put it back onto the ship, which means now the ship is going to stay longer in port to get the cargo sent back to origin. So no matter how you slice and dice it, this is adding to an already phenomenally poor situation in terms of congestion, which we do not have the slack in the system to handle. So this will simply worsen everything.
Yeah, it's as if this wasn't enough. Just very recently we heard that we are now facing yet another disruption with the situation in China and more specifically Shenzhen shutting down because of the zero COVID approach in China. And so I want to ask Simon, what do you do when you hear this type of news in order to prepare yourself and prepare your customers? Can you share with us?
Yeah. Firstly, do you remember when container shipping used to be called boring? I think most people now, they're absolutely longing for those days to return. There's nothing boring about what we do anymore. So we're a medium-sized UK freight forwarder. We've got JV offices in strategic locations and I'd say an extensive list of origin partners as well. And the first thing you have to do is you have to ascertain the truth. Communication is obviously very, very important. You've got to keep your clients informed, and that's paramount. The situation's evolving at the moment. So my understanding, literally as of this morning, is that the ports are operating under key worker status. The majority of factories are closed for an additional 7 days lockdown. It's almost certain that that's going to increase. But there's already trucking issues absolutely everywhere. We're estimating that it's something like 4 to 6 weeks before it returns to normality. In the meantime, we're just working closely with our partners to find solutions wherever possible, particularly for critical and time-sensitive cargo.
If I may just add a slight comment to that, because you're absolutely right. It develops day by day. That was actually just before we logged on to this one. I was reading through the newest advisory, in this case from Hapag-Lloyd, and sure, the ports and terminals are still operating. Problem, as you were mentioning, it's the inland part that's shut down. And the update that now came from Hapag-Lloyd is their expectation is, for now, it appears at least 13 vessels are going to be impacted down in Yantian. And then I went back they're kind enough to have years worth of customer advisories there. And I found the very first one last year when Yantian shut down. And in the first one there, they listed 25 vessels. So, and we all know last year it went from 25 vessels to a total of more than 200 in the market when all was said and done. So 13 already now, combined with now there are new curbs coming into effect in Chongqing, in Dalian, and in Shenyang. So this seems to be going downhill fast.
Wow. Mike, you kind of have an interesting point of view, because you've been in the industry for many years, and now you've transitioned to Windward, and so you can see kind of both sides of the coin, I guess, in some sense. Can you share with us a little bit how you see the situation?
Yeah, again, it's a very challenging situation, and I'm glad I'm not in Simon's position for a change. I mean, it's been quite chaotic 2 years. Just looking at the data, especially the Windward data, every day that Shenzhen port's not fully operational, that could affect 79,000 plus TEU. So obviously this is going to have a big impact. We've got trucks waiting outside of the ports, and people are not going to be able to, obviously receive their goods in time. It's obviously going to have a massive impact on this. And that is just going to lead to congestion. It's going to lead to other people looking at different options, like Sam's already mentioned, in terms of can they go from other ports? Are they able to truck it, rail it? And if everyone is looking at these opportunities, it's just going to create bottlenecks elsewhere. And so therefore, we've got to be really careful in how we put out the message in terms of, this is going to have a big impact. How do we mitigate some of this? And, again, going back to the data and elaborating on Simon's point, should the congestion continue, we expect the Shenzhen ports probably needs about 5 to 6 months before they get back to normal, which is obviously going to have a significant impact on getting the containers out of those areas.
Yeah.
And just, if you allow me just a slight comment, because one thing that's different now compared to last year when Yantian shut down, last year, there were at least also the options to send some of the cargo on the overland rail link for the ones that really were desperate to get the cargo through. Now, courtesy of the Russian war, that is also an option that's off the table. Putting it on air freight becomes even more challenging, with a lot of the cargo flights no longer being able to overfly Russian territory either.
Yeah, this connects to your earlier points about, usually on a normal day, whatever a normal day is anymore, this kind of situation in Russia would not necessarily have affected the supply chain, but now everything is every drop that falls into this already full bucket is extremely important, I guess. So thanks for these insights. I guess the situation is kind of unique, not in a positive way, unfortunately, but there is the lowest ever schedule reliability at the same time that there is an all-time high in prices for container shipments. So basically what we're saying is that customers are not paying more for a lesser product, which is a very, very difficult situation to be in. But kind of trying to find a silver lining in this, is it possible, do you think, that freight forwarders might be able to take not advantage, but use this opportunity, I should say, to adopt kind of a consultative approach and really be there for their customers to help them mitigate some of the risks that are coming up, and kind of position themselves and their value to their customers in a better way than ever before. Mike, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, sure. And I think one of the big things in this industry is we're very reactive, and we try our best to be very communicative with our customers. We're trying to plan as best we possibly can. And again, a lot of these situations happen, and we have to be very reactive. And I think one of the goals of obviously of the ocean freight visibility product is making those communications and those pieces of information get to the customer more proactive. And that's going to be a very powerful tool, especially I'll give you a scenario where, we've got 100 containers on a vessel, it's been delayed, we don't usually get notifications until quite late due to carriers, due to, port issues and things like that. So it's very important that we get this information earlier, because, when those vessels sail China, we're planning those deliveries for the haulage in the UK market, for example, 3-4 weeks out. And in a challenging haulage market, making sure those slots are available and tracking those in the ETAs can be very manual, very painful. And so therefore, it's really important that we have this communication. As soon as we get that communication early enough, we can communicate to the customer, there is a challenge, there is a problem, this is the situation. What are we doing about it? Well, we're rebooking your delivery straight away. We are trying to mitigate those detention and demurrage costs. We're trying to make sure your hauliers are aware that they can maybe look at other work, and therefore they can pick up other bits of business whilst those bookings are now going to have to slide. So using scenarios like that, it's going to have a really big impact on how we can give that customer, whether it's the freight forwarder, BCO, a real insight on how they can mitigate that and communicate that to their sales teams. If it's the end user, because ultimately the end customer is having major impacts of this, global supply chain crisis at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. That makes sense. Simon, Simon, Lars, any of you have anything you'd like to add on top of that?
I think Mike's absolutely right. The current situation, the global situation that we're in, it's unprecedented. It really is. But equally, it's what separates the good forwarders or the excellent forwarders from the rest. You can now take this opportunity to really enhance your relationships with your customers. You have to buy into some products. I think from our perspective, the ocean freight visibility product, it's still very new. It's already adding value to our business. It's both internally for our own users and externally and for our customers. We've been around for about 40 years now, so we're an established business, but it's we're very much a digitally focused forwarder. So that's probably the best combination for me, and being able to pull this additional data and this excellent visibility that is now on offer is fantastic.
Yeah, and you can say, I might be slightly provocative and say, if you're a forwarder in the current market and you cannot make money, then you have no place being in this industry. It really is as simple as this. It comes down to, on one hand, visibility of being able to demonstrate clearly to the customer what are the factors completely outside anyone's control. I mean, nobody believes a freight forwarder could stop the war in Ukraine, for example. And then also use that visibility to quickly come up with a plan B. This is about demonstrating to the customer, given the adverse circumstances that we don't control, what is it that we do control, and how do we help you mitigate the risks that we face? And if you as a forwarder cannot make money on the back of this right now, you will quite simply go bankrupt in short order.
I think I'm not going to comment on making additional money from my perspective, but I think in real terms, you have to be very careful as a forwarder as well at this time in terms of what you build and what you buy. Lots of forwarders have got some fantastic developers and IT teams. It's very, very clear, abundantly clear. You can't rely on the carrier's data alone. Visibility solutions are going to help you a lot. The ocean freight visibility product, that solution has facilitated a lot of automation now in our business. We're keeping our estimated dates up to date in as real time as we possibly can. We're advising predicted dates for the arrivals. We're updating our actual arrivals and the discharge dates all automatically. So it's actually freed up resource. And if you think about it, the freeing up of that resource allows our customer services team to really concentrate on the customers, find the solutions that we need to. We've already spoken about China, about the Russia-Ukraine situation. There's solutions that need finding every day of the week. Now, if you've got teams of people that are manually going and searching for this data, relying on not the best data from the carriers, if we're being honest, they're wasting their time. So you've got to get something in your organization that gives you that competitive advantage there.
Yeah, and I think just to expand that, I think that's one of the most important things is you've got an expense in terms of headcount and things like that. So it's really important you utilising that headcount well. And like tracking vessels is a nightmare. Being there, done it myself. You should be able to go to the customer, giving them the other options, making sure that the customer's fully aware and actually having that really good customer service, because this business is still all about relationships. We can digitalize a lot of things and we can use tech to our advantages. But allowing the tech to aid the communication with your customers and with your suppliers, etc., really has that massive impact in terms of utilizing the tech to free up that availability resource to make better and more informed decisions. And again, going back to the reactive versus proactive, becoming more proactive again.
Thank you all for these insights. So you mentioned, as we staying on the topic of technology, you mentioned the ocean freight visibility as well as other type of solutions that are available out there. I want to talk about, so obviously ocean freight visibility is based on maritime AI, but so AI is obviously important in this kind of situation. But what other innovations do you see impacting the supply chain in currently and in the next few years? I don't know, maybe Lars, you want to take this?
There are quite a number of different innovations. I think the one now that we also talk about visibility that's going to impact the market in a significant way in the coming years is the deployment of IoT devices, particularly trackers, not just on the reefers, which is already rolled out massively, but also on the dry containers, to allow for much better visibility all the way end to end, and not just in isolated pockets where, okay, fine, now it's on the ship, or now we happen to be on a truck that's equipped with a tracker, but genuinely end to end. That will open up much more opportunity, both for the individual shippers to not just see where the cargo is, but predict where it's going to be, but also opportunities in terms of cargo triangulation and becoming much more efficient in how we handle the supply chain.
Simon, any thoughts on innovation?
Yeah, I think from a machine learning perspective, there's plenty of opportunities there going forward. I think you've got to know the problem that you're trying to solve. You've got to understand the question, and then you can reach some answers on that side. But I wanted to touch maybe on standards really for a second as well. Standards and harmonization, it's incredibly important. And most people don't realize that they actually exist. So there's lots of experts out there that have done the hard work already. So if you're building something, if you're reviewing something, researching something, these standards already exist and allow interoperability. So it goes without saying, we should all be striving to remove paper documents from the supply chain, and that can only bring advantages to commercial organizations and governments as well. I've had a little bit of involvement down the years with the UNC Facts team and the transport and logistics domain in particular. There's some great projects in there, some ongoing, some that have been completed, and they're all referenced, and they're all based on the multimodal transport model. And then you've got the DCSA as well, who have come on in a big way in the last couple of years. They've used the MMT actually as a basis for a lot of their published standards. Their biggest issue at this point in time seems to be the adoption. And there's various carriers out there at various levels of maturity. So, but it is becoming, more and more private companies, if you like, they're actually discovering these standards now, and they're building their solutions around them. So you can have all the innovation in the world, but if you're a forwarder and you're working with 100 different partners, you don't want to build 100 different solutions. So that's where standards can really kick in, and you can take advantage of that as well.
Thanks, Simon. So we're approaching towards the end of the webinar before we turn it to Q&A, and I see one question there that I want you all to address if you can. But before we go into that, can you? Is there anybody who wants to share any thoughts, any comments, any advice to freight forwarders? In these times. Mike, I see you smiling. You want to go first?
Yeah, well, I could turn this into a sales pitch, really, couldn't I? But I don't want to do that. I think, over the last 2 years, we've definitely seen a lot of challenges. People have been affected by work and obviously personally as well. The COVID pandemic, no one saw that coming. It's had a huge impact on a lot of business and a lot of things across the world. We've had other issues. We've had Evergiven getting stuck in the Suez Canal. Lack of equipment across the world, or equipment in the wrong places, port congestion. We could probably spend the whole webinar on Los Angeles port, for an example. With vessels, being moored, waiting to berth and things like that. So I think one of the reasons why I joined Windward was to really emphasize the fact that you've been able to utilize the tech to free up, again, like I mentioned earlier, going off Simon's comment, is using the resource, your then manpower, your resource to help communicate, help find solutions. I think that's one of the reasons why I joined the company, is because there's definitely a need for some sort of this product, and helping the tech to enable your business rather than just, be a nice sit alongside. Obviously there's different ways you can use the data, and Simon and Metro are already doing that in terms of the API functionality of it all. Really driving that good behavior to making sure that data is getting used in a more effective way. A lot of people have got a lot of data. They don't know what to use, how to use it, what to use it for. And it's being creative and making sure it really has a resonant effect on the end customers at the end of the day, which is us. We've seen inflation grow up across the world. We've got driver haulage issues in North America, Europe, UK especially. So there's a lot of things going on that need help. And if we can provide as much help as possible, that will have a massive impact on the supply chain moving forward.
Maybe if I can add, I don't know whether it's a comment or rephrasing, because I agree with everything that Mike said here, but I see the challenge ahead for all the freight forwarders out there. You need to think about this as a two-tiered process. There's one thing related to the whole digital infrastructure and the visibility. And I see still a number of stakeholders that misunderstand that, to the sense that if I only get the right digital tools, if I only get the right visibility, then I will be competitive. From my perspective, that is completely wrong. Sure, in the short term, when not everybody has it, that will increase your competitiveness. But it is something you have to have. It's the baseline. If you don't have it over time, you will simply go out of business. But having it does not provide you the competitive ability. That comes from your people. then it is enabling your people to then say, fine, given all this information, given the predictive capabilities, what are we then going to do? So technology is not the competitive advantage. It's table stakes. You must have it. It's still the people that provides the competitive advantage.
Yeah, I fully agree. By the way, the way our approach to AI, as our CEO and co-founder recently said, is continuous training. And so I think that it's true for AI. It's definitely true for for people as well. So I think that as you implement any software, you need to train the people to use it. You need to train the people to do the right customer service. Definitely, I agree with that analysis, Lars. Thanks. So we do have one question, and we're going to stay with you, Lars, because I think you're going to like answering that one. We have a question from the Q&A, which talks about the continuous disruption coming from different angles, and it seems like every time it's an angle that maybe we didn't think of before. So try to think ahead. Maybe the next few years. What do you think could be a source of disruption that isn't science fiction at this stage? But you think people may not take as seriously as they should at this point?
There are a couple of things. There are both an operational disruption that I almost know for sure is going to come, and then there's on the commercial side. Let's take the commercial side first. There's already I was about to say, extremely heated competitive fight between existing forwarders, digital forwarders. Obviously, we have some of the carriers that say they want to be end-to-end providers. Then you have the Amazons and Alibabas that's going to turn up the heat coming in from their angle. We're increasingly now seeing container terminals go into the logistics arena as well. And one of the things to take a cue from, which I found fantastically interesting, was just last week when Hapag-Lloyd presented their annual report for 2021. Hidden on page 100 and something, there was one single paragraph that should give rise for concern for all the freight forwarders out there. Because basically, now I'm paraphrasing, I can't remember the exact wording, but what Hapag-Lloyd said, that there might be scope for additional growth opportunities with the alliance providing inland transportation. This is the first time we have seen that one phrased. Up until now, the ocean alliances have been just that, on the ocean. Hinting that they might actually go inland as well should be seen as a significant competitive threat. So that's on the commercial threats that are out there. I'm not sure whether it's an answer to the question, but let me throw it out there anyway. Let us put on happy thoughts and say there are no more curveballs. We have had all the curveballs we can take, and gradually the operations will become more and more normal. I build a small model and say, let's assume all operations are normal by December 31st this year. That would be great. Then I looked at North America. That will mean that the extremely long supply chains will shorten yet again. But when you shorten the supply chain, that of course means you get an extra surge of containers that suddenly become empty in the US. And you will have no vessel capacity to move it out because they're dealing with the normal flow already. Quantitatively speaking, you are talking 3 million additional empty containers in the US by the end of this year if nobody does anything. And given the level of visibility and how planning is done here, my baseline scenario is nobody is going to recognize this as a problem until all the depots are already overflowing. And then all the stakeholders will have a massive problem on their hands because now you have an importer that want to return an empty and there's nowhere to return it to.
Wow. Yeah, that's definitely something to think about. Anybody else has any thoughts on the possible challenges that where they can, the next curveball, as you phrased it correctly, Lars?
I don't think it's a curveball. I think there's already challenges within the cyberspace security as well. I think we've seen, carriers being hit recently, forwarders being hit, and I think that is an ongoing presence, especially as we get more digitalized in the world, and especially in the supply chain. So I think we need to still be very mindful of that. That is still a massive issue. And, if a couple of carriers, for example, got hit by the same time, that could have huge implications. So it's not a future state scenario, but it's very much a constant threat at the moment that we need to be very mindful of.
Yeah, I fully agree. I see Simon and Lars unmuted themselves. I don't know if you have any additional comments on that.
What you want first, Simon?
Okay, thanks, Lars. I absolutely concur with what Mike's saying there. I'm scared to death of cyber attacks at this stage, and I think everybody who has responsibility for a business should be protecting themselves as much as they possibly can. As a business, we're investing a large percentage of our budget in IT security. We have a multi-vendor, multi-solution approach. It almost seems it doesn't matter how much you do, how much money you throw at it. If somebody really wanted to, that they can create you a problem. You can't just throw money at it, though. I'd like to say that the time and effort spent on training is really, really important. You're only as strong as your weakest link, and businesses of all sizes are being targeted now as well. And perhaps even worse still, you could end up being collateral damage where you're not targeted, but there's been a bigger, more widespread attack and you're the collateral damage. So, do all the right things. The replication, the backups, be testing them, do absolutely everything, train your users, test them, lock everything down. Obviously, it goes without saying, these are all standard things that you should be doing anyway, but there are lots of companies out there that probably do need to raise their game in this area, and it doesn't matter how much you're spending, nobody's perfect.
I mean, the way I look at cyber attacks is cyber attack is not a curveball. Cyber attack is a certainty. The curveball is whether Russia will go completely hog wild and we'll see a massive spree of them, but that we will have cyber attacks. I mean, we already know you still have expediters right now struggling to get back on after their cyber attack. You had some of the major terminals in India that was impacted just a month ago. A year ago, you had toll logistics in Australia be hit twice from the cyber attacks. So cyber attacks are a certainty. It's just how many are going to get hit. That's the key curveball we have out there. And I agree, nobody can ever be completely safe. But I also see an industry, and this is widely understood as an industry, that have not really taken this threat serious in recent years. And I still see an industry where a lot of players are not really taking it serious. There's this sometimes, at least I come across it at times, the notion that a cyber attack is some hacker geek that comes completely from the outside and hacks his way into your systems. That is very, very rarely the case. Usually the case is you have not updated your systems. So a well-known backdoor, even a 12-year-old script kiddie can use, will get into your systems. That could have been easily prevented. Or more likely, somebody just convinces one of your employees to do something they shouldn't do and do it completely unawares. All of this is down to not necessarily throwing a lot of money at the problem, but it's training, it's awareness training and making sure systems are updated, something as boring as that.
So I want to end on a positive note, and I want to say that obviously it's been a kind of a crazy time to be in this industry. I want to say that maybe coming back to some of your earlier points that you all mentioned, I think there's a lot of innovation in this industry. I think there's a lot of possible solutions for more and more of the challenges that are coming up. So I think we talked about cybersecurity, we talked about visibility for the supply chain, we talked about IoT devices, we talked about multiple types of solutions that are out there. I think each one of you have a lot more to say about all of these topics and everything else that was discussed today. So I want to invite anybody on this call to reach out to you and talk to you. I think Lars, you're obviously available on LinkedIn. I think all four of us, but more importantly, all three of you are available on LinkedIn. So I want to invite anybody on this call to reach out to you all and continue this discussion as much as you want. We will, as I said, we have recorded this session. We will share it with everybody, and you can feel free to share it with everybody else any one of your colleagues that were not able to attend today, because we obviously understand that it's kind of a crazy time in this industry. I want to thank, we're coming to the end of this. I want to thank all three of you, Lars, Simon, Mike. It's been an extreme pleasure for me. It's been very insightful. And thank you for taking the time to be on this webinar with us today. I do hope to see each of you separately and together on our future webinars. And personally, I can say it's been a real pleasure. So thank you all for joining. And yeah, if anybody has any final things that you want to say, you're welcome to do that. Otherwise, yeah.
Let me just add one final comment also on the positive side. Despite all the problems we're talking about here, let's not forget that there were more containers shipped in 2021 than at any other point in history. So all these problems have not stopped the global supply chain. It has more likely shown just how resilient the global supply chain is, even given all this adversity.
I think that's the best way to end this webinar. So thank you all again. I'll see you very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.